Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update video today. We'll go through some of the main newspapers here in Spain, check out what is happening in the press around the country. We'll have a look at El Mundo, El País, El Confidencial, RTVE, the state broadcaster, as we normally do. And then at the end of the video, we'll go into the comment section and check out what is happening there. Lots of feedback in the comment section about Australian beer yesterday. Glad to see that I'm not the only person out there that doesn't like Foster's beer. And there were plenty of people telling us about their favourite Australian beer. So we might have a look at some of those comments at the end of the video. Now let's get straight into the news. And we'll go to El Mundo as we normally do. And we'll click on this article here about the labour market in Spain, see what it's about. And the headline, Los trabajadores jóvenes cobran hoy salarios hasta un 50% inferiores a los que se percibían a su edad en 1980. Young workers today earn wages up to 50% lower than those at the same age in 1980. The crises consolidate the precariousness of youth unemployment in Spain. So that unfortunately is the reality here in Spain when it comes to young people's wages. Today, 50% lower than the wages people were earning with the same age back in 1980. And the terrible situation here in Spain of economic crisis after economic crisis not helping things much either. The economic crisis back in 2008 led to an internal devaluation here in Spain. Of course, Spain couldn't devalue its currency, so they had what was known as an internal devaluation, where salaries and wages were frozen for something like 5 years, and people coming into the labour market after that internal devaluation now have to put up with very, very low wages. And for a lot of young people, it's impossible to take any life decisions with the salaries they earn. For example, when it comes to buying a house, starting a family, and all of those other things that you need a good salary to do. Now we'll go back into the news, and there's an article about the UK and Boris Johnson, so we'll click on that one. And the headline reads, Boris Johnson calls on the British to be responsible in the reopening of pubs and shops. Shops closed since January are crowded early in the morning, and bars estimate that they will serve up to 15 million pints of beer this week throughout the country. So the long-awaited reopening of pubs in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson there asking for people to be responsible, and pubs preparing to sell up to 15 million pints this week. So people obviously thirsty and eager to get back into the pubs. So we'll see if they can avoid there in the UK the same problems that we have had here in Spain. Every time bars and restaurants open up again, as we know here, they've closed, they've opened, they've closed, they've opened, because every time they open up, especially the inside of bars and restaurants, case numbers go up, or at least that has been the case in various autonomous communities around the country, for example Navarra and Castilla y León. Now we'll go back into the news, and there's an article about the Jansen vaccine, so we'll click on that one, and the headline reads, this is what the Jansen vaccine is like. A single jab and easy maintenance. This Tuesday, the first doses of the Jansen vaccine begin to arrive in Spain, which only needs one dose and can be stored in a conventional refrigerator. So finally, the Jansen vaccine is going to arrive in Spain. I think the government is looking to substitute the controversial AstraZeneca vaccine with this American vaccine, and they're confident that they're going to be able to speed up the vaccination campaign here in Spain with the arrival of Jansen. And let's be honest, compared to the other vaccines, it does seem fairly simple. Only one dose and you can store it in the fridge. Now we'll leave El Mundo there. We'll go to El País, see what is happening there. And the main story that El País is going with here on the left is about Spain and the European Union and the European recovery funds that Spain is waiting to get its hands on. And the headline reads, España se planta ante la UE en defensa de sus reformas clave. So Spain is standing up to the EU in defense of its key reforms. The Spanish government is trying to seek consensus for labour, tax and pension changes. The recovery plan will be sent to Brussels 1 month late. So Spain delaying the reform plan that they have to send to Brussels in order to get their hands on that 140 billion euros of EU aid. Apparently the majority of the reforms have been approved by the government here in Spain, but there are still some sticking points, and the ones that we saw there when it comes to pension reform, labour reform and tax reform, they can't seem to get the consensus on those matters yet here in the country, because apparently the changes that Brussels wants Spain to make will have a huge political and economical impact on the country, so they have to get everybody here on board first in order to make those changes. And that's going to be difficult because we're talking about unions and business lobbies, and it's going to be difficult because history tells us that those groups don't normally agree on basic things when it comes to the economy. So we'll see what happens there, but Spain really needs to get its hands on that cash. Now we'll go back into the press, and there's an article here about the end of the state of alarm, so we'll click on that one. And the headline reads, Restricciones más allá del estado de alarma. restrictions beyond the state of alarm. Experts trust vaccines and the evolution of variants of the epidemiological situation in May, but take for granted that the limitations will have to continue. And that has been one of the big debates taking place in Spain at the moment. What is going to happen when the state of alarm ends on the 9th of May? Is the country going to open up again? Are people going to be able to travel around the country freely like we could do pre-pandemic? Or are there going to be restrictions in place for a longer period of time? And I think that given the slow pace of the vaccination plan here in Spain and the fact that the health situation really isn't under control yet, with some autonomous communities experience what they like to call here the fourth wave, we will most likely have to live with mobility restrictions beyond the 9th of May. But you never know. Now we'll leave El País, go to El Confidencial, see what's happening there. We won't have a look at the health data because it hasn't been updated for a few days. And we'll have a look at this headline here about the Jansen vaccine, and the headline reads, España confía in Jansen. Spain trusts Jansen to stop doubts about vaccines and fear of another wave. Spain faces a crucial week to keep the pandemic at bay and advance the vaccination plan, with the arrival on Tuesday of the first doses of Jansen, the only single-dose vaccine approved so far in Europe, and with which the Health Ministry hopes to give a new boost to immunisation. And there's a headline just below that about Andalusia, and apparently the government down there is going to meet this week with the manufacturers of Sputnik V. So Andalusia also trying to get their hands on that Russian vaccine. We saw that Madrid did something similar a couple of weeks ago, meeting with a representative of Sputnik V, and now Andalusia thinking about going down the same path. And as we also saw in the main headline, Spain now pinning its hopes on the Janssen vaccine to remove all of the doubts that people may have when it comes to being vaccinated. Now we'll go back into the news, and there's an article about the tourism sector here in Spain, so we'll click on that one, and the headline reads, España se la juega en verano. Spain has a lot at stake this summer. National tourism only covers 40% of tourism in Spain. Spain has at stake some 43 billion euros, which is the amount that entered the country before the pandemic due to foreign tourism. So that headline there gives you an idea of just how important foreign tourists are for the Spanish economy, and national tourism alone is just not enough to make up the numbers. So again, we'll pose the question, will or won't Spain open up to foreign tourism this year? I personally think that it will, but let us know what you think in the comment section below. Now we'll leave El Confidencial and go to the state broadcaster, RTVE, see what's happening there. And the three main stories the state broadcaster is going with today are related to vaccines. So we'll click on this one here on the left about the Prime Minister and what he has had to say on the topic. And the headline reads that Prime Minister Sanchez is calling for unity among the autonomous communities and criticises that they are trying to go it alone and buy their own vaccines. So the Prime Minister, Mr. Sanchez, obviously unhappy that Andalusia has recently announced that they are trying to get their hands on the Sputnik vaccine and go it alone, and he's calling for unity at a national level. So we'll see if the autonomous communities here in Spain listen to the Prime Minister. Now we'll leave the news there and go into the comment section, check out what is happening there. We'll have a look at this one here from Hiki Hiki. To me, a lot of Spanish lagers that I've tried taste pretty much the same, but Estrella Galicia is both very different and excellent. Hiki, thanks for the comment. I did a video on beers here in Spain a few years ago, and I also came to a similar conclusion to yourself, that a lot of the lager beers here in Spain taste very similar. There are a few good boutique beers now available here in Spain. You can get your hands on some good pale ales, IPAs, and other beers like that, but the traditional brewers here in Spain tend to produce fairly similar tasting beers, or at least that's my opinion. We'll have a look at one here from Melissa. The comments of the PP and Podemos on the election campaign in Madrid are so dramatic. Yeah, Melissa, thanks for the comment, and you're right, some of the statements that have been put out by those two political parties in recent times are fairly dramatic, especially the words from Ms. Ayuso when she says we have to choose between communism or freedom. Pretty extreme in my opinion, and the words from Podemos in recent times saying things like democracy is at stake here in Spain and in Madrid. So pretty dramatic language being used by politicians at the moment, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more statements like this in coming weeks. And finally, one here from David. What do you plan for day 1000? Yeah, David, thanks for the comment. It's still a little bit too soon to reveal exactly what I've got planned for day 1000, but believe me, it's going to be big. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you on the next one. Hasta luego.